Hello, everyone, and welcome to the European SDG Summit. Specifically, welcome to the European Roundtable on Sectors Approach to Circularity. This roundtable has been co-organized by CSR Europe together with Wind Europe, European Aluminium, and European Textile Services Association. My name is Georgia, and today, with the support of my colleague Mehdi El-Girmay and Melissa from Be My Up, we will guide you through the discussion that will happen on this platform. In this roundtable, we will hear from the experiences of key industry sectors, what they are doing to achieve a sustainable Europe, but also a circular economy in Europe by 2030. Indeed, the European Green Deal has brought back, has underlined the importance of a green transformation and a shift from a linear to a circular economy, circular production and consumption as well is extremely important, and the role of key sectors in these industry sectors in this is of course strategic. So in the next 90 minutes, this is what we will discuss. But before starting the discussion, I am happy to share with you the agenda of the day. Let me go through a bit, let me go through the agenda and the speakers that we will welcome today in this session. So first of all, we will hear from the European Commission in the relevance of the topic at the EU level. Maria Rincon-Levana, team leader for circular economy, sustainable products, production and consumption at DG Environment, will share with us the status of play on circularity and at EU level. We will then pass the word to industry sectors. Colleen Laborel from Director of Public Affairs and Communication from European Aluminium, Marilyn Schmidt, Analyst for Environment and Planning at Wind Europe, and Robert Long, Secretary General of the European Textile Services Association, will share with us what they are doing inside their own industry sector to make this circular economy mission possible. We will head then to the reactions from company panel with Erika Sachs, Production A, and Alan Pilsen, Cluster Lead for Sustainability and Europe. We will close the discussion with an intervention from Liz Truscott, Director of European and Material Strategy at Textile Exchange, to give us an overview of the global focus on circularity and raw materials. So please do not forget this and questions. I will of these also over to the discussion. Over to you can also use the topic. So over to the over to your so your
Great. Thank you. So I'm ready. So if you could, yes, the next one, please. Yeah, well, on this slide, I just wanted to convey a message that I'm sure you had discussed during the day today, that is the need to change how we approach the way we produce and consume in Europe. There's latest and very recent data that tell us that we cannot continue in the same path as we do now, because it has been estimated that if we continue, by 2050, the world will be consuming as if there were 3 planets, Earth, whereas we only have one. There's a very common figure that is provided by the ecological footprint network that tell us about the overshoot day. So the day in 2020 where we have used the resources that belongs to the following year. So we are living on borrowed resources. The situation created by COVID has also shown how important it is to reinforce and to break the dependency from outside global value chains. This doesn't mean only looking at ourselves, but also improving value chains across the world so they are also more reliable and dependent themselves. If we move to the next slide, please. Well, I don't even have to mention how important it is that we rebuild our economy right now, that the Commission has put all the power of the EU budget at the disposal of the recovery. There's two major instruments that have been put forward in recent months, and that they are currently under discussion. The Next Generation EU, which is directing around 750 billion investment and funding, and also a reinforced multi-annual financial framework for the next 5 years. The circular economy has been placed, and it was placed as a key area when the COVID was not even in the picture in 2018. And the reality is that the Commission has kept the priority of the circular economy as part of the Next Generation EU and the next and the new MFF, because as you can see in the slide, the action plan that was adopted in March 2020 was already very clear on the role of funding and financing in order to achieve a circular economy. Next. But I want to focus a little bit the intervention today on the topic of circularity. Where is this coming from, and do we believe it's a right approach to circularity? Yes, that's the reply from my side. Inspiration, I would say, the first action plan. So we are not starting 2015. This first start with product design, following with consumption, and making that waste was another idea of plastic, impact of plastic waste, but as well to reap the economics and the benefits for businesses in this specific business sector. And it was counting as well with the strong engagement from consumers and citizens. What the plastic strategy did at that time was to propose a material-specific approach, bringing together the entire value chain. We have an example of how to engage with citizens, and also how to really target those plastic items that were the most pollutant of the environment, with the Single-Use Plastic Directive, and the Plastic Alliance that was setting an example of how to engage with businesses along the value chain, both producers and recyclers, on how to foster the uptake of recycled content, just to mention one of the angles of this work, into new products. So how to remove barriers both for producers and recyclers to really foster the uptake. If we move to the next slide, we see that this approach was also taken up by the new Circular Economy Action Plan. You see there in a very schematic way what is the structure of the new Circular Economy Action Plan. It presents first a sustainable product policy framework that combines action both on the design of products with actions on consumer demand and side, and then also working on sustainable production processes. And then also it focuses on how to avoid the waste generation in the first place, and once this waste cannot be avoided, how to transform it into secondary raw materials. But I want to focus today on this box in pink that highlights what are the priority sectors that in this action plan we call key value chains, where we will be applying the general principle of the circular economy, and more specifically the principles that are put forward by the Sustainable Products Policy Framework. Next. Very briefly, and just to set a little bit the framework of the discussion or of the tone of my presentation, what is this Sustainable Product Policy Framework? It has three main tiers of action. Product design, for that the Commission has announced in the Circular Economy Action Plan a legislative proposal which will look into within the scope of the Eco-Design Directive, currently applied only to energy products. You need to consider that such a piece of legislation can not be implemented more concretely. The different requirements for each of the product will start with key product value chains. For instance, the adoption of this, I want to encourage that because it's open until the 2nd of November, as the Commission intends to do, and that the broader public consultation is planned for the next month. The review and revision of the review of consumer products at the scale, which products have a lower environmental footprint will have a lower carbon footprint as well. Completed with a legislative proposal on the substantiation of information to consult, trying to avoid and to tackle misleading green claims, or what we call greenwashing. The idea is to use the product and organization environmental footprint methods. That is a methodology that has been developed by the Commission together with the industry based on life cycle assessment. So for those claims that are made on product categories covered by these methods, this method would be like the common norm to apply it. And then on circularity and production processes, we will have also as well the work on the revision of the Industrial Emissions Directive, but as well on the promotion of the industrial symbiosis. And it's specifically in this point where the linkages with the SME strategy and the industrial strategy are the major ones, the stronger. If we move to the next slide. Yes, you see here that I have skipped the slide on key value chains because I will introduce it following this one. Just want to very briefly highlight what the action plan proposes to reduce waste and obtain more value with more value from the waste we produced. Three major objectives. That is the first one, prevented waste in the first place. For that, the Commission will look into the possibility of setting targets for prevention targets, in some waste streams, for instance, packaging. Then also enhance implementation of the requirements for EPR schemes, or continue modernizing EU waste laws. Then it will focus as well on increasing the uptake of secondary raw material by tackling the presence of substances of concern, by developing in cooperation with industry methodologies, and also the key role of product passport to pass on along the value chain the information about these substances, just to give an example. And then acting on the commitment of the European Green Deal to reduce waste export through the revision of the waste shipment regulation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. On the value chains that had been selected by the new action plan, it's worth mentioning 3 types of actions. The ones that had been identified in those two start with those value chains that are following up on the action of the EU. The actions that are highlighted in the action plan followed in relation with or to the implementation of the plastic strategy, the of mandatory quality for the end of life cycles directive that is to be reviewed in the next presence of microplastics in the environment, both intentionally microplastics, for instance, in cosmetics, set up EU-wide on this slide, please. Slide, and plastic is just to propose certification schemes or increase the research on these areas. We will work as well on a policy framework for biodegradable and bio-based plastics, and we will continue implementing the single-use plastic directives. The second key value chain that is highlighted in the action plan is packaging. On that, we will follow up on the revision of the Waste Framework Directive and the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive that were adopted in 2018. And the Commission is currently working with the stakeholders to present the revised essential requirement for plastics for packaging. So those minimum requirements that need to be complied with in order to place packaging in the EU market. And in this essential requirement will look at issues such as over-packaging, recyclability of packaging, traceability of packaging. The objective is to make packaging in Europe reusable and recyclable in a cost-effective manner by 2030. And then we will continue as well with actions on construction. We have just adopted the renovation wave on renovation of buildings and how to make this sector a key sector for the recovery of Europe, but as well how to improve energy efficiency and material efficiency, and how circularity has been integrated is a clear example of mainstreaming of circularity in different value chains approaches. Next slide. And then the new action plan follows up as well the approach of the first action plan on looking at which sector could benefit from a sectorial approach, either with strategies or a compilation of actions or an initiative that covers and bundles together different actions that are to come. This is the case for the Circular Electronics Initiative that is to be adopted in 2021, and the idea is to bring together different strands of work. For instance, the coverage of these products under the implementing measures of the Eco-Design Directive. Let's remember that in their majority, these electronics are energy-related products. How to implement within these objects or items the right repair that combines not only repairability, but also the right to get the right upgrade of electronics. And then on waste side of electronics, explore the possibility of setting a new weight packet scheme or how to improve the restriction of hazardous substances, or also very closely following and working is due to be adopted in the coming weeks. So really about to be presented of how to manage the impact of the battery life cycle into the provisions that were already included in the battery look at improving to propose components that brought components that, for instance, the recovery of materials, the dumping reconstruction, for instance, strength of this product, the battery, but also the battery. In we have also the known impact. So more details will be shared in a couple of weeks whenever the proposal is ready to be adopted. And then the Commission is also working on actions for textiles. Why? Because they have an important impact on the environment. The production of textile generates as much as CO2 emission as the aviation sector, because right now we are not using textile at its maximum capacity. There's been this sentence that says that we are sending to landfill on average a truck of textile per minute globally. So we need to improve recyclability, reparability, and reusability of textile, changing as well consumer perception of these items. This is very closely linked to the Sustainable Products Initiative, because as I was saying at the beginning, one of the major sectors that could be covered by this initiative is textiles, and also because it has the capacity, this strategy, to cover different angles of textile value chains. We cannot forget textiles are global value chains and have impact on third countries, so we will need to reinforce also the work on international. And if I had to take one of the elements that it's more closely or it's closer to the plastic strategies, this would be certainly the case. The Commission is internally deciding how to approach this, the action on this, but it will be for sure a way to improve the competitiveness of the sector in view of the COVID. And then finally, I want to highlight that there's also another value chain that is not so necessarily on a targeted approach as a strategy, but sorry, no idea what you're. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. I apologize to Jasmine if it's something I'm doing that she's not able to follow what I'm saying. I'm happy to follow up even via email if she wants. And then key product value chains that's exploiting synergy with other policy areas. This is relevant for food, water, and nutrients, where the Commission has just adopted several initiatives of the European Green Deal on the farm to fork and biodiversity strategy that cover the circularity and the potential of circularity to protect natural resources. And just to mention few, setting targets to reduce food waste, that is both in the circular economy action and the for action plan, that is also in the biodiversity strategy, to really ensure nutrients are upcycled as much as possible, because it covers not only abiotic material, but also biotic material, what is more linked to ecosystems. And reference to my first one on the recovery plan, because we have just launched, the Commission has launched today, and I encourage you to have a look. Also, the deadline is beginning of next year, 2021, so plenty of opportunities still to apply if you have any innovative project on circular economy. And with this, I will return the floor to the moderator.
Thank you, Maria, a lot for your intervention. It was really really interesting and insightful. So I'm really sorry. I'm reading from the chat that some people had problems with listening and seeing the slides. I hope now it's better. It's better. Always part of live virtually. So, but I'm really happy as well to introduce the next panel. In this panel, we will have, as I mentioned before, 3 industry sectors, and we will learn from their experiences what they are doing exactly to make their industry sector more circular. So I'm happy to give the floor, to start giving the floor to Colleen Lavorel, a European Aluminium. They have produced a circular aluminium action plan. So please, Colleen, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours to drive us a bit more into the details of this project.
Thank you, Georgia. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll put my camera, and if I see that the connection is not good enough, I will turn it off.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks for having me here. I'm very pleased to join this roundtable. And indeed, today I wanted to give you some short presentation about the Circular Aluminium Action Plan that we have released earlier this year. So namely really looking at the potential that recycling aluminium has, especially also to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal and the Circular Economy Action Plan. And also to point at some of the challenges that we are facing today in our value chain. So starting with the first slide, just want to stress that aluminium is by many ways very fit for circular economy. So it's a material that has permanent properties. So it means that it can be recycled endlessly without losing its original properties. It's a very durable material as well. So in some applications, especially in the building, it can really be in use for a very long time. It's also a material that has among the highest recycling rates compared to other materials. Today in Europe, we achieve close to 90% in the automotive and the building sector. For packaging, for aluminum beverage cans, we are around 75%, so quite significant recycling rates. And last but not least, also to stress that in our case, aluminium is really an energy bank, in the sense that recycling aluminium helps to save so 95% of the energy that is needed for the primary production. So it's both energy saver and also saver in CO2 emissions. So on the next slide, please. So why have we released this Circular Aluminium Action Plan? Basically, it's to really bring a common strategy for the aluminium industry to achieve full circularity. So starting from, as I was saying, already some good performance, but to achieve really a complete change in the circular systems. Aluminium, so things, packaging sector, which also among the focus sector of the strategy also has a, I would say, even bigger important strategy autonomy for essential materials. So see how global value chain have been really among the sectors that were really hit, and economy as a way to enhance to enhance strategy. Okay, the fact that which durable on CO2, and there's enhancing ahead. We see that applications, especially in mobility, this requires, of course, even though we are indeed among the energy-intensive industries, actually electro-intensive. As I mentioned, the circular economy helps in saving CO2. At the same time, also primary production has really decreased a lot. Its CO2 emissions, so the reduction is 55% since 1990, and we even want to achieve more reduction by 2050. So it really makes sense, I would say, economically and environmentally, of importing this primary aluminium to really either preserve the existing production we have in Europe or to increase recycling. Yeah, that's what I show here on the next slide. So I'll not repeat myself, but here I think just to show that we see really a big potential for enhancing the share of recycling in the overall metal supply. So here you have the focus on the demand for aluminium in Europe, which is growing, as you can see, by 2050. And we would like to increase, of course, the share of recycling in this overall metal supply. Today, we are around 36%. And, according to our projections, we think we could achieve half of the demand to be covered with recycled aluminium. So quite also, it means that we need to also really address the bottlenecks and the challenges that we are facing today in our value chain to achieve this objective. So moving to the next slide. Yes, here, so just to explain a bit more in details, to zoom in on the potential for recycling aluminium in Europe. So starting from today's situation, where so it's the graph on the left, the chart, the first chart, where we are already recycling 2.6 million tons of post-consumer aluminium every year. But at the same time, we see there are some loopholes. So 1 million tons of aluminium scrap is leaving Europe every year. So it's a loss for the European economy. At the same time, also, there are 4 million cars or end-of-life vehicles that are leaving the continent without their certificate for destruction. So they're also not, let's say, per se, staying in the European economy in the loop, even though they might be recycled outside of Europe. And we have also some loopholes, so some losses that occur in the collection. Also, the fact that there are some very different recycling results especially for linked to the infrastructure they have put in place, the collection system that is in place. Some fractions of aluminium also end up filling, even though from cover some particles, but still we would welcome to have complete phase out the collection and sorting facility. Results, we would address those bottlenecks. And here you see that just to also measure a bit the contribution of circular. Here you see aluminium to climate mitigation. So we've made some calculations comparing the carbon footprints of the primary aluminium we are importing and the CO2 savings we can achieve if we recycle domestically aluminium. And here you can see that it would lead to a decrease of 46% in CO2 by 2050. So that's quite a significant significant results. So on the next slide, I just would like to give some overview of the challenges. I think I mentioned some of them, and for us, it's really about how we can move from good to great. So how can we really grasp all or seize all the opportunities we see from an increased share of aluminum scrap being available and more circularity in Europe. So if we look into the automotive industry, for example, so the end-of-life vehicles today, so we really want to make sure that, of course, all end-of-life products are collected and efficiently recycled. So to make sure that the material stays in use and it really stays in the loop. And what we see today is that especially for end-of-life vehicles, we need to find new recycling routes because today most of the material ends up into secondary foundry alloys, which are used for engine blocks for cars. At the same time, with the trend of increasing electric vehicles, we would less and less find this market available for secondary foundry alloys. So what do we need? We need to we need to improve sorting technologies, so to make sure we can work with more clean or more clean waste streams. Secondly, is to also work on the dismantling. So make sure that we have a better dismantling before we go in the step which is called the shredding. So it's really cutting the car into small pieces. And the last point, of course, is to work on the design. So we also very convinced that circularity is something that should be really integrated in the design of the product. So really from the start. And in that respect, so one of the solutions also we see is very close collaboration with our customers. So in that case, with car manufacturers. I think in general, for also the other applications, what we see as a priority is really to have more investments. We really need to have more investments in the infrastructure, so collection and sorting infrastructure, also to invest in sometimes more sophisticated technologies that can also help to separate also the different types of alloys in a most efficient way. So in the end, we can have also not only more volume, so we can really further close the loop and make sure that we don't lose any part of our material. So yes, you can move to the conclusion. I'm really done now. But so achieve 50% of the demand to be met with post-consumer recycled aluminium by 2050. So to aluminium, and thus also to save on CO2 very much. So 3 paths is to work on the legislation. There are still some bottlenecks in the existing legislation, and some also which will be revised under the new circular economy action plan. More investments, so more incentives for those investments, also research and innovation, and much more cross-industry collaboration. So these are really the 3 paths that we see as priorities for us to achieve our potential. Thank you very much. And of course, if you have any questions, here are my contacts, and I'm also happy to answer your questions through the chat box. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you very much for your presentation. And indeed, these are the contacts of Colleen if you want also to get back personally to her. But and I'm happy to link to what you just said about the need of more cross-sectorial collaboration, to invite on the floor, on this virtual floor, Marilee Schmidt from Wind Europe. Indeed, she will update us on the status of blade waste, but also Wind Europe has experienced some cross-sectorial collaboration. So Marilise, whenever you're ready and you want to drive us and guide us into what you are doing at Wind Europe.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you for letting us join this really important session. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to present how the wind industry is working towards full circularity and how cross-sector collaboration will be key to our success. So you can move on to the next slide. But first, for those of you who do not know Wind Europe, we are a trade association with over 400 members, and we represent, of course, the whole wind industry. We help shape policy and also provide quite a lot of market intelligence information. You can move on to the next slide, please. So first and foremost, the wind energy is really committed to this transitioning to a circular economy, which is, of course, in line with the European Green Deal and the new EU Circular Economy Action Plan. We, as an industry, we actively seek to continuously improve what is already quite a high environmental performance for the wind energy, and of course to further reduce our environmental impact throughout the whole wind turbine's life cycle. So, for example, wind energy has one of the lowest greenhouse gases emissions throughout its life cycle compared to other energy sources. It's also quite a durable product. The standard lifetime of a wind turbine is 20 to 25 years, and we now see some turbines reaching up to 35 years through lifetime extension. During sourcing, of course, the environmental footprint of suppliers is also taken into account. At siting and installation, developers try to optimize the positioning of the wind farms via siting studies and environmental impact assessments, as well as engagement with local stakeholders to ensure that to minimize the impacts on land use and on biodiversity. During operation, wind turbines emit no direct greenhouse gases, no direct air pollutants, and also use no water. And finally, at decommissioning, we already have it's 5 to 90% foundations. Founded foundations in the tower already have recycling practices. But of course, there is one big challenge that remains for us, and that is recycling blade waste. And that is due to the composite materials that are used in the production of blade waste. And this, of course, for us, it has become finding ways to recycle blade waste has become a top priority, as it is kind of one of the key elements for us to fully close the circular loop. You can move on to the next slide. And one of the reasons why it is becoming more and more of a priority is because the existing wind fleet is aging. As shown on this graph, you can see that Denmark, Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands are the most mature markets. In these countries, we see respectively 57%, 33% for Spain and Germany, and 21% for the Netherlands of turbines that are over 15 years old. You can move on to the next slide. So Wind Europe estimates that about 22 gigawatts of wind energy will be approaching end of life by 2023. And as shown on the pie chart, we expect that most of it will go through lifetime extension. So at the moment, we're preventing much of the waste from coming through. But around 4 gigawatts will be fully decommissioned or repowered. And this means that we will have around 14,000 blades that will require recycling by 2023. one of the kind of major difficulties that recyclers are facing with dealing with our blade waste is to make sure that there is a secure, stable, secure stream of waste coming through, because it is very much dependent on the decisions from wind farm developers to decommission their wind turbines. And so having the appropriate volumes is key for the recyclers to make business cost effective. So at Windward Europe, we are therefore now working on fine-tuning our data to get a better idea of the expected volumes in the coming years, and we want to try and also map out the geographical hotspots down to the regional level, so that with this data, the recyclers can better identify which locations would be most appropriate for them to develop the recycling facilities. Next slide, please. However, it is also important to note that the wind industry sector is one of many users of composite materials. So end-of-life blade waste will only represent 10% of the total thermoset composite waste by 2025. In the challenge, we need to work all together to be able to develop the solutions for all the with CEFIC, the European Chemical Industry Council, and with EUCIA, the European Composites Industry Association, so that we can share best practice and work on novel approaches to recycling composites in general, and of course wind turbine blades for us. And so together we have published a report earlier this year on the state of play for composite recycling. Next. And solutions do exist. Unfortunately, they are at different levels of maturity. Amateur and readily affordable technologies. Unfortunately, the value of the recycled material is significantly decreased. So, for example, in cement co-processing, the glass fiber is recycled as cement clinker, and the thermal energy is recovered, so substituting the fuel in cement production. So this is really positive from an environmental point of view, because the process can reduce the CO2 emissions of cement manufacturing by up to 16%. In mechanical grinding, the material is grinded into short fibers and powder, and then is recycled as raw material for ribbon back support, for furniture and bridges. So in both cases, for co-processing and mechanical grinding, the end product is not a new composite material as I've described. So the other technologies that are here on the graph are more promising in that respect, not all economically viable yet. There is so this means that there's limited user demand for the recycled materials from these other recycling technologies, and this is another key challenge for recyclers to be able to build a business case. Another key dimension to consider here is the environmental impacts of each technology, but these have not yet been fully assessed in a standardized way. So this is one element that we want to work on and to get a better understanding of. So at this stage, what we need really is more research and funding to diversify and crucially to scale up composite recycling technologies. There's also a need to incentivize the use of recycled composite materials in new products. As very well highlighted by Colleen earlier, the research and innovation funding should also be earmarked for the development of new materials, new high-performance materials with enhanced circularity properties. So we need to look at designing for longer lifetime, for reuse and for recycling. And this is where the recently launched Zebra project is particularly exciting. So this project brings together industrial companies from across the value chain, as well as technical centers, with the aim to design and manufacture the wind energy's first 100% recyclable wind turbine blade. And finally, we also need more cross-sector collaboration to share best practices and develop European value chains. I invite you all to Wind Europe's End of Life and Strategies Conference, where these issues and also during the event mentioning and dismantling of turbines as route for wind blades.
Thank you. Of my get back into our lives, of course, general and a general
of the
also
5
of the
the solution.
First, we need to check
The and
the sector, and we're all looking for new business models. Well, to help us to do just that, it's my pleasure today to tell you a little bit about the little-known world of the textile services sector, because we believe this can help all of us to, as I read on the CSR website earlier today, to take sustainability from strategy to action. So if we can go to the next slide. No, that's it there. You've already gone to the next slide. It's about changing our approach on textiles and clothing. And there the question is, you know, do we actually still need to own and wash our own clothing and textiles? It's a very sort of basic question, actually, but we believe it's an important question. So now we can go to the next slide. A more sustainable solution is already here, if you like, particularly for professionally used textiles. Textiles and hygiene as a service. But first of all, for which textiles? Now, we've put a few pictures there to help you, because we realize that, you know, textiles, everybody knows about textiles, but a lot of people don't actually know that professional textiles don't have to be owned. They don't have to be washed at home. There are actually companies out there, professionals, that are able to do this for everybody. But let's have a look at some of the areas. Workwear. So workwear, whether it's general workwear, whether it's PPE, personal protective equipment. We've heard a lot recently about personal protective equipment in the COVID crisis. Whether it's things like high visibility garments or clothing for firefighting or chemical protection, the list goes on. But that's one of the areas where textiles can be provided as a service, not just as a product. The next box is hospitality. So hotels, restaurants, catering, all of that. Yeah, there's a lot of textiles used in all of these hotels we go to. Do we think about what happens to the textiles? Where do they come from? How are they washed? How are they cared for? How are they repaired? What happens to them afterwards? Well, we have the answers to all of that. Washroom services. Well, I mean, I could ask you guys, what do you actually use at home to dry your hands after you've washed them? And we're all washing our hands a bit more than usual. What do you use at home? You use textiles. What do you use when you're outside? Well, not always textiles. There's paper, there's this hot air stuff. There are also textiles. We can use textiles, and getting single portions of fresh hygienic textiles. There are systems to do that. It's there. Mats. The mats that are at the entrance or offices at the entrance will get serviced and come back, repaired, extend the lifetime. But if you look at the car industry or wherever there's, you know, printing industry, where there's all these substances, including heavy metals from machinery, those, well, you could use a paper wiper and it absorbs and you could chuck it away. What happens with that after? Who knows? Or you could actually make sure it goes into a big plastic container that's reused and reused and reused to make sure that all these wipers, that the heavy metals and the oil is actually taken out of them and then actually reused again afterwards rather than the disposable solution. Healthcare. Everybody's talking about healthcare. You know, elderly care, surgical textiles. There are textile solutions rather than using, you know, disposable single-use stuff on this. And then clean rooms. So, you know, and then that little picture, I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if the resolution has improved there, but I think you should be able to see a kind of person who's really masked, a little bit like an astronaut or somebody in a COVID unit. Well, this is not to protect the person wearing those garments. This is to protect the food, the IT processors, the pharmaceuticals that this person is working with. And those textiles, reusable textiles, then go back to a specialized laundry to make sure they're looked after. Now, I spent a little bit of time on that because most people simply don't know that textile services exist for all these professional textiles. So now we go to the next slide. And, you know, basically we're saying there that the alternative is going beyond products and I'm going beyond ownership and looking at textiles as a full service. So there you have the customer, it then goes to the laundry, it then gets the quality control, quality assurance, and then goes back. So it's a cycle. We provide clean textiles at the right place at the right time, of course. And our business model, that's what we're talking about here, a different business model. It's a circular flow between us and the customer. You can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, we heard that we need to improve the value chain from the European Commission earlier on. And yes, of course, in our association, the European Association for Textile Services, we do what we can also to mobilize the value chain at European level. So yes, if we go back, that's fine. We're looking at the raw materials, we're looking at the textiles, we're looking at the transport. That will then go to a company. Berenson is one of our companies. And it goes back to the customer and we have the circle there. And then afterwards, in terms of the recycling. Now, we are constantly improving these processes, whether it's the circle in the center in terms of resource optimization in an industrial laundry, or whether it's on the supply side at the beginning, and of course on the what happens afterwards. So let's click on to the next slide. And this one is a kind of another visualization of the circularity of our business model. You have in the writing there, we're a circular and sustainable alternative to ownership, to washing at home, and to disposables. I've said it already. The business model, that's the text in the center there, tiny, but you'll get the slides afterwards. We're focusing on availability rather than ownership. Whether it's washing machines or textiles. You know, go to Netflix now. I think we know that, or one of the Disney or whatever the competitors are. Well, you can do the same thing for textiles. It's a textile service. It's a kind of a subscription. That's what we're all about, rather than use and dispose. Product and service. For love and integrated repair and maintenance. It's fundamental. Let's go to the next slide. I'm not going to talk about this one. I think about we're thinking for today, so I'm going to go. It sounds straightforward. I don't want to, but a lot of people simply don't realize it. We don't have to own our textiles. The sharing model is coming in, both at the individual coming. A lot of people say textiles and top level cleaning. You know, we do have reusable solutions there, but to help us make sure that this happens, because it's not so easy. My two last points are call for action. I know the lady from the Commission has already gone here, but it's both a call to action to policymakers and to consumers and users to take into account the efficiencies of scale, for example, the economies of scale and the efficiencies of rental and sharing, and to look at the externalities associated with ownership, washing at home, and disposables. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Robert, for your intervention. And I think it was extremely interesting, also from a consumer point of view. Being myself a consumer, sometimes we forget about all this, about all of this. But also thank you, because you already introduced Erika. Erika from Lindström will be our next speaker. We are adding into the third part of our discussion, the reactions from companies. So we will hear first from Erika, and then we will hear from Alan from Vestas. So please, Erika, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Hello, I'm Erika Sass. Hello, I'm from the Lindström Group, working as a production manager, and I also have a process specialist role within the group, with a support function in service operational questions. I'm here today to tell you a few words about our company, who we are, and how we run our operations in a sustainable way. So let's go and see the next slide. Well, Lindström is one of Europe's leading textile service companies with more than 172 years of experience in the textile industry. We actually started the business operations in 1848 as a fabric dye company, and over the decades, the business model has constantly developed. And just to mention a few milestones over the years, we started to rent textiles already in 1938. So the idea of renting textiles is not as new anymore. Well, today we offer quite a wide variety of textile services, ranging from workwear, mats, restaurant and hotel textiles, to industrial wipers, clean room and washroom services, just to connect back to Robert. And our company operates right now in 24 different countries, and we employ more than 4,600 people in this business. It's actually a family-owned company, and the head office is situated in Finland, in Helsinki. Just a few words about the group turnover was 408 million euros in 2019, so we are becoming more and more bigger. What we do, we actually ensure safe and hygienic solution for the best possible customer experience, and also want to help our customers to become more sustainable. So let's go to the other slide and see how we do that. Well, our whole operational business model is based on circularity. As you have also seen in Robert's presentation, our business model looks rather like an infinite loop. What we do, the key is, first of all, that we produce only the needed textiles in just the right amount. So we try to avoid obsolete stock building. Of course, we carefully select the materials from the proven suppliers, and we design and produce the textiles to fit the user and the usage. And we create models that are planned to have a long life cycle. By repairing and maintaining them, we can, of course, extend their lifetime. So how? Well, in our service, we try to keep the transportation distances short. So we build our service centers in that way that those are close to our customers. And we use efficient industrial washing processes that we try to optimize every year. And by that, actually, not only us, but also our customers save a lot of energy and water in comparison with washing textiles at home. This is actually also a better way and a more hygienic solution rather than home washing. just to connect back to Robert, let me share you one example with our roll towel service. You remember he mentioned how to dry hands, but actually in 2019, in Finland alone, we have used more than 330 million times these roll towers. And by using this amount of rolls, we have saved more than 10 million kilos of paper waste. This is comparable to more than 1,000 full of garbage trucks. If you want to compare this, for example, to recycled paper, this service has helped to decrease the CO2 pollution by 1.5 million kilos, which is equal to, for example, drive your car about 240 times around the globe. It's quite a number, I think. So what we do is that we provide our customers with durable textiles that can be repaired, recycled, and reused, both during and after their years of service. So let's go to the next slide, please. A very simple presentation about how our environmental impacts look like. The pre-production of the materials, meaning production of the fibers, yarns and fabrics and the textiles, have rather a linear business model. And the manufacturing phases are not in our hands. So the improvements that we would wish to see would not happen in that quick way as we would wish to see them. But what we can do, it's actually, on the other hand, we can act and control the in-use and the end-of-life phases of our textiles. As you can see in the picture, we also take care of the process water, the energy, the chemical consumption, and these are actually already quite in a good shape as we constantly improve our technologies. But we have the textile waste to deal with, and we want to decrease and recycle, and that we can make quite a significant impact now. So let's see our figures in the next slide. Maybe there was one slide before that. Yeah, no? Okay, then we go to the next slide. So our figures today show that there are ways of recycling. So as also Maria has mentioned, the most common way in many cases, in many countries also today, but we try to do better. So next step would be that if we take these textiles and at least take them to energy plants, and with incineration at least we gain the energy, that's a slightly better solution. But the aim is to go to total waste recycling and to zero waste production. Of course, we constantly monitor new innovation and test with our partners the best solutions. We want to find possibilities for recycling and upcycling. And if we go to the next slide, we can actually see our present figures, how we do at the moment, and what is our aim to be in 2025. So based on the moment, our initiative is meaning all textiles also in all our country. As EPR is requiring separate waste collection in the extraction and recycling by 2025, constantly trying to find partners for that right now. If we go to the next slides. For example, in 2019, we introduced the eco-design mats, and these mats have half of the yarns used, which are made of recycled plastic bottles. As it's quite interesting that for 1 square meter, we use like 32 bottles, and we have already recycled more than 200,000 pieces. So, and the figures are still increasing. Or another example, if we go to the next slide, we can show how we have used our retired hotel textiles. We manufacture with one of our partners reusable shopping bags. And with the aim of replacing all single-use plastic bags, we have launched as a product returnable shopping bag in 11 countries with wide acceptance from the markets. For example, from India, these plastic bags were actually banned, and we have introduced this returnable bag, and this was awarded the winner of the Customer Retail Journey Innovation and the second edition Future of Retail Summit Award in 2019. which we consider quite an achievement. And another example, for example, we used end-of-life hotel textiles for manufacturing children's clothing with a partner. It's quite a nice way of recycling hotel textiles. But the future is about large-scale solutions. Whether our deals will be in the field of research or business, of course, we want to find the right solutions and right partners. However, these are often long-term projects that require years of research before they are really ready up to scale production. And if we go to the final slide, that's about Lindström caring. For us, caring for the planet means that we use natural resources wisely. We want to enable our customers to make suitable choices too. And by boosting circular economy with our stakeholders, we want to give more to the planet and use less of its resources. So thank you. This was all from my side.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, Erika, for your presentation and also for giving us a different perspective to look at the issue, what you are practically doing as a company and also as a member. I will not take more time because we are running a bit late, but I don't think the audience is worried about that. I'm giving the floor now to Alan. Alan, can you hear me? And whenever you're ready, you can speak. Alan?
Yes, do you hear me?
Okay, great, perfect. Yeah, we can hear and see you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So I'll just take it away. So first slide, please. Yes, cheers. My name is Alan Poulsen, and I'm cluster lead in innovation and concepts in Vestas, and I'm cluster lead for sustainability and advanced materials. I'm working with and I'm also working with development of new materials for our. We are making wind turbine we have like 72,000. We've made like 2,000 wind turbines globally, and are present. I have wind turbines in 81 countries, and have a global footprint from our factories and service operations. Our revenue in 2019 were 12.2 billion euros. So we introduced this strategy in the strategy 2020, and that's what I'm going to talk about. This has been. So one of the targets was to be a carbon neutral company by 2030 without using carbon offsets. And it was important here that we actually on this journey use carbon offsets. 1 and 2 emissions, that's in our own operations, by 55% in 2025 ourselves. And the thing is that we actually have a huge supply.
We want to decrease
supply chain. We actually have reduce the carbon emission by 45% per megawatt generated in 2030 compared to 2019. And I think this is a part of the ambitious. This is an ambitious target, especially when a lot of the thing we supply are steel. And then we have committed ourselves to science-based targets. So we've committed ourselves to the 1.5 centigrade degrees global warming scenario. So we think we are pretty ambitious here. Then we have also introduced targets on waste. So we're going to decrease waste from our production, not only ourselves, but also in our supply chain. And we've set the targets on hub and blade to be 50% recyclable in 2025 and 55% recyclable by 2030. While the part about working with the carbon emission is pretty mature, then the topic around working with zero waste is not that mature. So we are also developing that, and we're going to present a full strategy on that here in 2021. And the whole ambition for us is that we come from a place where sustainable, that was the business we're in, it's renewable energy, and now we want to have make our own products sustainable. So we want to be sustainable in everything we do here at Vestas. So next slide, please. Yes. So now I'm going to introduce you a bit to what is our experiences, because to introduce this these strategy investors, that has meant a lot for our internal value chain as well as our external value chain. And I think that's what you can't read in the books. That's actually how is people and companies responding to that, and how are we working with this in a global company, because there's a huge variance of how we work with sustainability and what it means to people in different parts of the world. So with a focus on our strategic suppliers, because of course, if we want to reduce our carbon emission in 2030 by 45% at our supply chain, then we're going to introduce targets for our suppliers with regards to renewable electricity. They're going to report CO2 emissions. They need to set targets for scope 1 and 2 emissions, and they need to measure and report waste. And of course, they also need to set targets for scope 3 emissions. I actually think that my experience here is, with the discussions I've had with our suppliers, that they're really keen on getting on this journey and how to improve waste and emissions. You also see that in some companies, they don't even have a really nice strategies, and they get the same requirements from other customers and so on. So that's a huge variety here, and of course we also need to assist those which are not that developed, and that of course some challenges. There is a huge variance in company maturity. Then there's also local extra, and of course that's also an issue, and I'll get that later, because I'm also going to discuss customers. And then there is also some companies are really knowledgeable, and others they just need lack of procedures and standards. So huge. Then we have the we have split the work into have met the issue with later make targets for each area in investors in order to reduce the carbon emission and also reduce the waste. And that can be done through, if we talk about reduce waste from our ordinary day-to-day work from our factories, but we can also look in a longer time horizon, and then we do work with the design of our products. But of course, we also need to follow up all the time and develop new targets, KPIs on this area in order to continually improve and to reach our set targets. Our experience is that sustainability is a value that talks directly into the heart of each Vestas employees, because a lot of the employees working at Vestas, they're doing this also because they have an ideology about a greener future, about renewable energies and so on. So they like this about being sustainable in everything we do. But also, it's a big company. We are more than 26,000 people globally. So we also meet different cultures, of course, and also cultures in different areas. For instance, those working within steel plates, those working with composites, those working with the offices. So that's also something we need to cope with. And everything here is about a change management. It's change management issue. So it's clearly that we're on a journey that I'm trying to facilitate here together with my good colleagues on the sustainability part. And then we have the customers, because when they set scope 3 emissions, then it's us as suppliers who is going to live up to that. And I think that our suppliers has been really open here, and they really want to also improve on sustainability. We've had some good open discussions, and we have also we're also going into collaboration together with our partners within sustainability. Here's a certain focus on blades at end of life. So our customers are truly engaged. This is important to them because their customers are you and me, more or less. That's us who buy the electricity. So that's an important journey, and we fully support that. We are in the same boat here, and it's an interesting journey. Our challenge here is that we have a lot of customers, and everybody wants to enter projects, for instance, about blades at end of life. But there's a risk that the focus is going to be very similar in all projects. So I think it's really important here that we dare, and also our customers, the utilities, they dare to think in new solutions and take risks, because I think that's what we need somehow when it comes to R&D. So if we talk about R&D, that's also where I'm from. 2040 targets we have, because not every are developed yet in order for us to make a zero waste wind turbine, but we're on board on this. To look into how can we reduce steel from emission from emissions. How do we increase the amount of recycled materials in our wind turbines? And we're looking into value streams and so on. But my challenge is also that scalability is an issue, and then funding is an issue. And that's also what I'm here from the in the business. And then finally technology. This is a big fun, and we're going to start at a time, just continuously. So thanks a lot. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Your presentation, it was straight at the point. And so now we're heading into our conclusion with a last panelist. I'm really sorry, we are, like I said, we are running a bit late, but we also started some minutes after, so I really hope the audience will still be with us for the next minutes. So please, Liz, Director of European and Materials Strategy at Textile Exchange, drive us into your presentation, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Georgia, and it's wonderful to be here, and really interesting combination of aluminium, wind energy, and textiles. I've been absolutely enthralled with listening to everybody's contributions. So yeah, I'm with an organisation called Textile Exchange, and Georgia, if you go to the next slide. We're a non-profit global organisation. Sorry, are you able to get to the next slide? Great, thanks so much. Yeah, this is us. We're non-profit, as I said. We're spread out around the world. Plenty of us in Europe, although we aren't very big. There's less than, I think we're around 50 people now, and growing. There's a bigger interest in the work that we do. So that's great to see, especially as we're all struggling to figure out what what build back or build forward better looks like. So it's great to be in this discussion today and hearing some of the ambitions of colleagues around Europe. Yes, I said we work in textiles. We focus in on the raw materials, so the fiber and material base that feed the textile industry. And our goal and mission is to accelerate the adoption of what we call preferred materials, which is a whole discussion in itself. But as Alan was saying, it's a journey, and we subscribe very much to that journey and that direction of travel when it comes to what it means to be preferred or sustainable. But we have had a recent strategic update, and that's reflected here in our vision and our strategy, which is to, if you like, build on this acceleration of the adoption of preferred materials to really work hard at ensuring that impact, particularly these that we're all experiencing right now, is front and center of our strategy. So as you can see there, we have an ambition to contribute to the industry reaching a 45% reduction in greenhouse gases. But we do talk about a climate plus approach, which is looking at at the biodiversity, the water, the soil, and of course ensuring that this transformation that we need is done with a socially just approach. And I think on the next slide, Georgia, we can see sort of the emerging of this sort of three-step approach that we're starting to look at when it comes to raw material production. And first is looking at the decarbonisation of those materials. So what are the ways that we can produce materials, the choice of materials we use, etc., that are going to reduce the amount of carbon intensity of those materials themselves. That is looking at the natural ecosystems and the landscapes in which materials essentially come from. Even our non-renewable materials such as polyester and other synthetics originate from a natural base and non-renewable all the same, but the oil, coal and gas that's extracted from the ground essentially. So looking at ways to restore and regenerate land systems whilst delivering the products that we need for the industry. And then, of course, what we're talking about today, make sure everything we do is part of that transition to closing the loop and transitioning to a circular economy. And if we think about that, the biological as well as the technical cycles that we need, you can see that very much in ecosystems, for example, let alone recycled polyester, sort of chemical technologies. So we're looking at all different ways to close those loops and reduce our impact on the earth. And I think there's been some great speakers already that have brought the challenges of that and the state of the industry, whether it's textiles or aluminium or wind energy. I think some of these challenges are the same. But yes, next slide, thank you. Okay, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but I just wanted to, frame what I'm going to talk about is in this framework that you can see here, which is our corporate fibre materials benchmark that we use as a roadmap for our members to start tracking their progress to the mission that I mentioned before, the acceleration in the use of preferred materials, and then ensuring that has a positive impact on society and the environment. So we have developed a framework. We originally had the first two columns on the left, so we were looking at integrating a material strategy into the business, and then we have this portfolio approach looking at priority fibres that are used by the industry. And of course this third bit that's only come in last year, the material circularity, was really through this recognition and stakeholder feedback, etc., that you can't really have a material strategy now without thinking about the entire circularity agenda. And it's, as somebody also said, it's not just about the recycled input that comes back into the system and displaces the virgin materials to some extent, but from consumption. So that's been that I'm going to show you next. Just a little bit of background on our benchmarking program. 173. Some of these, the logos on the right, you'll recognise. In fact, probably most of them. But 170 our own membership, but it stretch beyond there. We benchmark into 4 main market segments. That is home and hospital. That is and I would but I think to some extent rental services are ahead of the fashion industry in that department, which is really interesting. I'd like to talk more about that. mostly Europe and North American brands at the moment, but we're getting more and more interest from Latin America, Japan and Asia, and other companies joining this, if you like, this race to the top that we call our benchmarking program. And I think on the next slide, please, it's just so this is where we start to look at the data. So as I said, last year was the first year that we introduced the circularity benchmark component, but we had been including a question around a circularity strategy for the last 3 years. So this was amazing to watch how, at least at a strategic intent level and ambition level, circularity is really sort of entering the language and the strategic development of the textile and fashion companies. And you can see from the blue band here that we went from, around a quarter of the companies that were involved in the program to over 3/4 of them by 2019 have got, some in circularity ambitions within their broader strategies. It's not playing out yet, as you can see by the 0.06% of all materials coming from post-consumer textile waste. We'll unpack that a little bit soon, but we're still to realise the results of these ambitious strategies. So on the next slide, sorry, this is quite a lot of data and it's quite small. It's all in one of our reports, and there's the link at the end of my presentation. I ambitiously wanted to show you some of the qualitative data that we collected as well, which we pepper our quantitative data with, yes, it's quite small. But the point of this slide is to show the breakdown of the questions that we ask companies and how they're doing across those in detail. So as I said, 86% or over 3/4 of the companies involved in the benchmark have a strategy. But then if you start to travel that into, say, integration of that strategy into the business, you can see in the middle column just that only 9% of those strategies are actually being, that there is accountability from the C-suite or senior level members in the delivery of that work at that point. So that's an interesting reflection of even just integrating and building accountability within the organization to deliver on a strategy. And then, all the panelists have mentioned the need for more investment. So companies are starting to subscribe to the notion and are forming great relations and discussions amongst peers. Actually fully investing in seeing this come to reality is still a real struggle. I might move to the next slide. We start to look at, you can see things have started to drop off in terms of things like a big and ambitious goal of decoupling the success of the business from the resources and consumption that they're using. I think we've all talked about the challenge, and I think, with the ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals, now is our time, but it's still a very challenging area to even start those conversations, let alone step forward into delivering them. But I think, with the work that Robert and others are doing around showing the way forward with service-based industries, I think it's going to be really interesting. We found that if you look down at the unsold pre-consumer textile products, this is a really interesting area for the textile industry, because if you think about waste through the textile supply chain, a very fragmented supply chain, but you'll know that within, say, the spinning or even the knitting and weaving and possibly the assembly, there's business efficiencies into removing out waste and sort of bringing that so-called cut-offs or scrap or whatever back into the process. It's when you get to the, if you like, the post-industrial, and you've got a lot of less transparency around what to do with this waste, whether it's samples, whether it's faulty goods, whether it's products that just didn't work out for whatever reason, just didn't take on sales. That's a big chunk of waste that we need to start being more innovative around, as well as the post-consumer piece. And I might go to the next slide, Georgia, which, sorry, if you move to the next slide again, in the interest of time, I want to just spend a little bit of time here. This is the data. As I mentioned, it's a benchmark program. It was really collecting baseline data, a lot of data on strategic intent, not so much on quantitative waste savings or being able to break that down. But this will show you from the data that we did collect that out of all the materials in use, you can see the 6% on the bar on the left-hand side came from recycled. That was mainly recycled polyester, rPET, coming into the synthetics industry than anything else. But then if you take that, and if you take that 6% into the middle chart, you'll see the big chunk of, the plastic industry, I would call it, the non-textile inputs at that 90%, and the 10% coming from textile inputs. And then if you look at the third bar, that's taking the textile inputs and putting that into pre-consumer textiles versus post-consumer textiles, which is the end product that we want to see, and closing the loop on the end of life or end of use. And I think on the next slide, in the interest of time, this is our flow in one sort of diagram here, which really shows how we're starting to quantify the materials in a very global way. And obviously, the more companies that take part in this program, the more data we have and the more conclusive we are of the entire industry. But you can see the big chunk of light grey, that's your conventional raw materials coming into the system, and your other certified raw materials that section, your certified animal fibers, etc. And then you can certify either allergy area, allergy area, allergy area, allergy area, allergy area, allergy area, 0.6% of recycled textiles that we are estimating is currently sort of coming back into the textile sector. So that's the bit we're going to be watching and working with to encourage and see more. I think it was Maria at the start talking about a truckload of waste every minute around the world. It's just horrific, but we do have to be ambitious and optimistic. And I think on the last side, you'll see a direction to the report I was talking